Prayer and the pledge by Mr. Brinkle.
Please stand. Dear Lord, we thank you for another beautiful day, and we thank you for allowing us all together today as a body to represent Grant County. And we pray that we'll make wise decisions, we'll be open-minded, and we ask us in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and now we'll start with the roll call for the council.
For the council. Brinkle. Here. Connor. Oh my God, this is old. Sorry. Hicks. Caudell.
You said he would be absent.
Okay. Kitts.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Lemming.
Here.
McWhorter.
Here.
All right, and now I will turn it over to Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes, thank you, Greg. I'll go ahead and call this, our recess has ended, and I'll call our special session of the commissioners to order. And just let the record reflect that myself and Mr. Stewart are present. I'll turn it back to you.
All right, well, thank you. And I think our one item on the agenda, business is BW jail design discussion. And I believe we're going to turn it over to you guys for a presentation.
Yeah.
Turned up the heat a little bit.
It's a little warm, but it's all good. Good evening. For the record, Dustin Fry with BW. We're here tonight to give everyone an update on where we are with the scoping period of the jail project. And got our whole team, so we should be able to walk through this pretty well and answer any questions. We got a packet of information here. Should be some copies there for everyone. Tonight, the goal for us is to get everybody up to speed of what we've been working on over the last few months as we've gone through the design process. We'll give everyone an update on what that design looks like. We'll talk through how we've structured base bid and alternates, so we all understand what we have currently in the project and what's an alternate there. You'll hear from our architecture team, our MEP team, the construction manager from a schedule and logistics point of view. Then we'll talk our current estimate, and then we also have representatives here to talk about funding options and bond and all of that good stuff. So hopefully we can get through that and answer any questions. I do want to emphasize the goal tonight is to give you an update of where we're at and make sure council has the information they need as you have decisions to make at your meeting tomorrow night. This isn't here's the scope of the project and approving the scope tonight. We are about 60% of the way through the design, and the good thing about that is we've got strong confidence in here's a minimum scope for the budget, but there's opportunity as we continue to refine through the rest of the design process and go out for additional bids, that these numbers will hopefully continue to refine down as they have been throughout this entire process. So the packet here is, everybody get a copy of that? Okay. With that, I think what we will start with is I will ask Sanjay Patel with RQAW DCCM, who's our lead architect, to come up and kind of start talking through the current design plans to give you that update.
All right, thanks, Dustin. Good evening again. Sanjay Patel, this is CW with RQAW DCCM. Some of you have seen these plans before. I hope it's not new for anyone, but I'll briefly explain the concept that we come up with. There's some design elements that we've included in there. And then feel free to stop me at any time or at the end of the presentation, ask any questions that you may have. So if you look at the plan that we have here, this is the existing D home. That's the existing pod that we have there, and this pod is the new pod that is being added. So plan left, true north of the D home, that's where this thing is located. Branson is up to the top side, the east side of the D home. The existing jail and the annex building is up to the north there. So when we started out the design, we talked about, what the main needs were, and I think beds was a huge requirement of this facility. So we felt that from a location standpoint, it made sense to add a single housing pod to the north side of the D home. From an operational standpoint, we tried to be as efficient as possible with your monies, and so this concept that we have used on multiple projects with a single control point in the middle and all the housing wedges around that single control point have proven to be very efficient in terms of operational costs. And so what we did was, typically our housing pods are around 260 to 300 beds. What we did in this case was maybe even bigger. So currently this housing pod right now is 348 beds. And that's a mix of 2-mans, 4-mans, and some dormitories. We do have 12 classification units around that single control point. So again, in terms of managing inmates, male, female, whatever the classification needs are for sheriff and the staff, we believe we have adequate classification separation opportunities in this facility. In terms of exterior, we've been very careful with the money. Again, we're not, building, Taj Mahal here. It's very economical, but very efficient, energy efficient, durable. And so that's this metal panel system that we have on this will serve those needs. It's hard to see, but the entry point that we've created, the existing entry point to the D home itself is going to be modified to be the main entry to the facility. There's also a jail lobby adjacent to that. So again, you can separate out where the public comes in for sheriff's needs and for the probation needs versus what people who come in for jail visitation, things like that. A lot of the existing spaces in the current D home are going to be kept, the administrative space are going to be kept as is. You have the probation departments, the reporting, the corrections, all of those spaces will remain as is with those spaces that they have. The basement, where we have probation, the correction in the first, day reporting in the second, those will remain as is. The other feature that we had to add to keep this operational was the kitchen and the laundry. Those are absolutely essential to the operation of a jail. And so the existing kitchen area that was here was expanded. Adjacent to that, we expanded some of the storage spaces that were there to include a laundry facility. So all of that is within that pocket right there. The existing intake booking that we started out with, we've got some alternates to talk about, and let me just bring up the plan. Stick to this plan. So the existing intake booking that's right here, we did have a option to add a juvenile facility, a small juvenile facility. It's about 9 beds, but it's completely independent of the jail, and so there's complete sight and sound separation as required by code and the standards. The existing pod that we have here, that's currently houses 46 beds. We have the option to double bunk it to 92 beds. So generally, that's your layout of the facility itself. Parking for staff will be across Branson on the east side, and they'll be entering through this point here.
Question for you on the parking.
Sure.
How does following a revisions you're suggesting, how does the parking space availability compare to what we have now?
So with street parking, the parking on Branson, we believe that, there's adequate parking to meet the needs of the facility itself.
Is it less than we have currently? Is it the same or is it more, do you know?
We lose some spaces with the lot for this area.
You know how much, well, on a percentage basis, what percentage we lose?
I don't want to guess, but we can get that.
We shouldn't guess it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we get that for you.
Mr. Patel, when you say double bunked at 92, is that for juveniles or adults?
So currently, that is for juveniles, but under this plan, that will be for adults only. We cannot be mixing adults and juveniles in that pod. So this corner here is the only juvenile area that we have, so.
So we can double bunk adults in that space?
Yes, we have to look at the standards, and as long as we keep them locked for less than 10 hours, we can double bunk those spaces. So between the 350, 348 in this housing pod, 4692 in the existing pod, and then there's some medical, there's some intake booking holding cells. You're getting up into that 450 plus range.
That's 6.6 million to do that?
Yeah, the alternate pricing.
For the D-zone, yeah. So again, there's a lot of issues with the existing pod. I mean, it's been leaking, the skylights are broken, the roof is compromised. There's definitely some fire alarm and security electronics that needs to be done, and then adding those bunks and refinishing the interior of that building will be required. Second floor, again, you've got the housing pod, as you got your cells there, you've got your existing housing pod there. Sheriff's administration right here on the second floor, where the existing investigations are. The only major change would be that the drug task force will be moved out and the investigations will be moved into their spaces. Talked about the housing pod. What doesn't go in this thing? I think I'll
If you
yeah.
scroll down, there's a summary of what we have there.
I'm just going to talk about the plan. Let's start with the graphic representation of our alternates that we have included here. So basically it would be the housing pod here, the kitchen laundry addition, and that is the extent of it. Alternate one would be the addition of the juvenile component here. Alternate two would be the housing pod refurbishment, adding more bunks. Alternate three would be the sheriff's office on the second floor, making those changes. So, and alternate four, as described, is going to be the exterior of the existing D home. So cleaning it up, patching the existing ephes, and maybe putting color paint on there. So those are the four alternates in addition to the base bid that we have.
I guess I don't understand what the base bid is. What exactly are you doing? You're building a pod, and then I don't understand what's new and what's not new on that diagram. Before, it was kind of like you had them colored so that we would know if you're doing something to it or not, or what was new. And obviously the pod is new in that picture, but if you go to like the next picture, that one, yeah, it's like, what's new? Is that all new, right where you got the hand there?
So this entry component here, we will be renovating that. The existing entry into the D home, that will get renovated. The existing kitchen will get torn out. That will get renovated into a larger kitchen. This area here, which is the storage, that gets all redone into a laundry. So basically, your new construction is right in that area.
Because then you also have an assumption that says the estimate assumes that the building will not be occupied during the renovation. So that means nobody is going to be in that building. Probation's not in there either during the renovation.
That was the intent. I think redoing the fire alarm system and things like that in the existing building is going to be very difficult with it being occupied.
I guess I'm not the commissioner in charge of things, but that wasn't, I don't see how that's even doable. So I think your number one assumption's not a good one.
Yeah, that's something that we've discussed in the past, so, I mean, depending on some of the alternates, we can look at what that would be in terms of what could stay occupied or not, but the systems, which we can talk about here momentarily, many of the systems in that building need to be replaced to bring those up to the necessary code and with equipment that's gonna be new.
So what code are we in violation of right now? Where do we not meet for that building?
I'm not saying you don't meet the code currently, but when we start doing work in those buildings, we gotta make sure that it's matches the current requirements.
I'll just mention, I know that it's always been in discussion that if we do anything to the detention center, obviously moving those employees out of that building is a huge cost savings to be able to work with them not in the building. I know that it's going to be one of those issues that commissioners could potentially have to deal with. I know we're looking at, the Salem Bank building as possible, being a shuffle to move them out and move them back. Obviously, we know that if you're going to, work on any of those systems, you want to make sure your employees are safe. So however that can be achieved to save those a cost, and I think we would need to work toward that goal. I know that's something we've always talked about.
You feel like the facilities we have at this point, you could accomplish them being in a new location for that 1.5 to 2 year period while that work is going on?
I think that there's potential there, yes.
Okay. And I know that we've talked about some renovation work and things you've done at the Salem Bank building to accommodate various offices, but having the money to do that now is an issue, so that's some first issue we're talking about too as we go through that.
That's something that we have known about.
Right. I know I remember we had that conversation included. I just wasn't sure how we were still following that path, I guess.
So we're already beyond those construction documents. So we're looking at an April 2028 open at the earliest. So we're 2.5 years plus. Would we, maybe this is too early to ask, would we have any contingency that if this project is not delivered on time, that you would bear the responsibility for, okay. I have no reason to believe you wouldn't, but it was just.
And there's a few months there at the end of that schedule that we consider closeout. We're done, the building can be turned over. There's a long process when you turn over a jail for sheriff and their staff to learn the new building and before you just put it to be safe. So I'd like to ask Alex to come up and talk specifically about this and more about the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems and what is included in our base bid, what would be put into those alternates as we had to figure out some place to provide a scope and break out what you can do with the budget. So, Alex.
My name is Alex Margoot. I am within Resco. We are the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, design, build member of the team. In looking at this project, we took a base bid with alternates approach, right? In terms of the base bid, what is the minimum requirements associated with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing infrastructure that needs to be done so that when you're done spending this big pile of money, you've got a building that operates well. right? So with the addition that Sanjay showed you, obviously all new MEP systems are included in that. However, you have an existing facility there that has 25-year-old chillers and aging out boilers and a control system that's kind of obsolete and no longer serviceable. So the last thing you want to do is spend a big pile of money and your chiller dies 2 months later, right? So as part of kind of a base project, which includes the addition and the kitchen and laundry remodel areas, we looked at what else needs to happen to keep this building operating for decades to come, right? So we looked at your central plant. You need a new chiller. You need new boilers. You need new controls. The VAV boxes, which are the terminal units that control the space temperature in each of the zones, those are 25 years old and have already begun to fail. So what we felt was appropriate in this project as part of the base bid is to go into that existing building also and update that infrastructure. Get it all set up so that, you know, when you're done spending this big pile of money, you've got a building that can carry you into the coming decades and isn't suffering from failures, you know, shortly thereafter. So what the base bid includes is a new central plant, which is new boilers, new pumps, new chillers, new pumps, new water heaters, new controls, and new terminal, zone terminal units, which are in effect the box that thermostat on the wall controls for each of those spaces. The air handlers, although they are 25 years old, they're not direct expansion. They don't have compressors. You know, so if anything goes wrong, it's a fan belt, it's a cooling coil that maybe needs to be brazed. We felt like that was a wise, you know, it's not a big risk to continue to utilize that equipment into the future. So that's kind of what you've got in terms of base bid, right? And there's some cost efficiencies associated with doing that. When you build this addition, we don't have to build a whole separate heating and cooling plant for the addition. So now you've got an old one and a new one, and when there's problems, now you got 2 sets of chillers to maintain, 2 sets of boilers to maintain. So what we felt was a good use of money is let's replace these, make them a little bit bigger, and they can handle the addition as well. That was the approach on the base bid. And some of the alternates, which I'll touch on briefly, go the next step, right? Under the base bid in the existing building, for example, all the lights stay. We're not proposing retrofitting those. They are T8. It is an obsolete technology. They're not the nice LED ones you have in here. However, if you're interested, there is an alternate that would replace all of those T8 lights. Get rid of the ballast, get rid of the lamps. You got the LED. I think we can all agree it looks better than T8. It lasts longer and so on. Many benefits, but I think it's alternate. I gotta get my glasses, I can't see anymore. Alternate 5 includes replacing all of the existing lighting and including controls. Newer codes require more occupancy sensors in places you don't have them now. So if we touch the system, it has to be brought to current standards. So that is included in that alternate. Alternate 1 is the juvenile and intake edition. And obviously that's pretty simple. That alternate includes all the MEP work associated with that additional square footage. Alternate 2 is the renovation of the existing pod. And Sanjay talked a little bit about that in terms of what that meant in terms of the bunking and getting that place spruced up and ready to go. Well, there's also the same issues apply. You've got 25-year-old rooftop air handling units, mold in your ductwork, there's been some humidity issues associated with roof leaks. So that alternate includes refreshing all of that infrastructure, right? You don't want to spend a lot of money in there on the cosmetic upgrades and then you got air handlers failing 2 days later. I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. The idea is to refresh the mechanical systems, refresh the electrical systems, meaning fire alarm and security electronics, as well as the plumbing system, new water heaters, new combi units, and the associated piping feeding them. Does that make sense? That's part of that alternate is for refreshing the space. Let's refresh the infrastructure so that it lasts decades to come. Alternate 3 is the second floor renovation. And this is pretty simple. It's basically anywhere there's a remodel happening, there's new mechanical and electrical systems, power where you need it, data where you need it, new lights and so on. Everywhere there isn't a remodel, everything stays as is. And lastly, alternate 6. In the base bid, there's going to be a new electrical service provided for this facility, 460 volt. It's going to serve the addition and the new chillers. These are going to be bigger chillers, more power hungry. We're going to serve them from the higher voltage new service. But there is an existing service in that building that's 208 volts, and it's 25 years old. The generator, you guys can see out there, it's it's been around a while. It's showing its age and, is past its expected service life. So what this alternate proposes is, if you want to do this, we can refresh that existing service, meaning let's put a new main disconnect in, a new main distribution panel, a new emergency generator, a new automatic transfer switch, so that, again, all the infrastructure associated with that existing electrical service is new and prepared to last 20, 25 years into the future. So that, I just wanted to touch on what's the base bid, what was the logic behind how these pieces of the project were itemized and separated into the alternates. And hopefully that makes sense. I went kind of quick.
Let me see if I can ask a question and make it clear. The current new facility you're going to build, the pod and the renovations to kitchen, laundry, and so forth,
Yes, sir.
they need to have current, updated electrical service and all those kind of things. It'll be new.
Yes, everything new.
This alternate to, I guess, redo or make the main electrical room new that's a separate piece at this point for this price. But I guess what I want to ask is, if you do it, so the one service area covers the whole thing, the existing plus the new, would it be less money?
It would not. It's going to be a larger service.
Okay, so I was thinking adding the two together may be more than if you just did it as one. That's not the case.
It's not.
Okay.
And we'd have to go back and refeed because the new electrical service is going to be higher voltage because of the bigger machines and the higher power draw. So what we're going to do is feed that new equipment that requires all that power in the addition from that new high voltage service. The existing service will remain useful to service the existing area.
And I'm just looking for a way to maybe save overall money if we did them both, I guess is what I was thinking. So.
Yeah, actually, I think the way it's proposed is probably the more cost-effective option. Alternate 6 is not inexpensive, but we put it in there to give you guys the option of, hey, do we want to refresh the electrical service while we're at it? If so, there's a cost associated with that.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I guess the question I'd have is, if you have a new addition, I guess it makes more sense to me to have HVAC that is for that new area, because obviously the old one is servicing the old area.
Yes, sir.
And so then if you're adding on new, then you would just add HVAC and have that mechanical and electrical all for that. And that way you're not messing with all this other.
You're right, and that is what we did. The new addition has its own air systems, its own exhaust systems, its own plumbing systems. However, the central plant, which is what provides the cold water and hot water for heating and cooling, it's definitely more economical because it needs to be replaced anyway. To just replace it with a system that's slightly bigger to accommodate those. That way you're not dealing with multiple sets of compressors, multiple sets of pieces of equipment to maintain and operate. That was the logic behind that decision. They do have standalone systems. They're just fed with from the central plant, which is the core infrastructure of the heating and cooling. but they do have their own systems. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about that.
So the $60 million is basically for the pod.
Is for the pod and also the kitchen, laundry, and the new central plant. New chillers, boilers, domestic water heaters, new controls, and new air terminal units. We feel like that's what's gonna leave you in the end, and when you spend $60 million with a building that's gonna run for the next decades to come. And not leave you with, oh, I just spent $60 million and my air, my chiller just failed. That's frustrating, and I understand that.
Well, 59,988.
All right, 60.
I know you were pushed to come in with a bid less than $60 million. You got in just under it.
Barely, there's a contingency, Dustin can speak to this, there's a contingency that's probably a little narrower than normal. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Let's talk, money. Right page here. So, yeah, the current estimate for the design development documents, remember I said about 60% of the design is complete. And we do have subcontractor bids for these numbers with that level of design. When you take out the scoping fee that you've already contracted with and are paying, the total projected estimate is 59.988. Now, in there is a little more than $4.2 million of contingencies. Still significant design estimate contingency because we're not done with design. So we were asked to come and say, hey, what's a projected GMP if the commissioner said, hey, we're going to sign a contract tomorrow? This is what that number is. We're not recommending that we go into a GMP at this point because we're not done with design and I don't want to have to carry that much contingency into a project. So we feel very confident that tonight we can say, here's the minimum scope, as we just talked about what our base bid scope is. Yes, it's just under 60 million. We do think that that's going to continue to come down as we finish the design and our partners and us go out and get subcontractor bids. We just bid a project last week in Indianapolis that at DD we were at 72 million and our bids came in last week at 68. We've seen some good subcontractor participation, more than we have in the last few years, getting more sub numbers. So we're confident as you provide them with more information, the better the pricing is going to get. So with the hope that then there's alternates that can be considered if additional scope's needed to finish the D-home. Any questions as it relates to the number right now?
I guess you're saying contingency, so really is the real number is like 59,988,171 plus the 2 million we already spent, so it's 62,012,618 plus you're saying on top of that, so another 4.2 million.
So the 4.2 million is in that number. Sorry.
Oh, it's in that number. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, those 4 line items there in the middle are different contingencies.
Okay.
And as we get through the design, that design contingency starts to go away.
Dustin, I got a question for you. This is just kind of for my own benefit. And you don't have to get specific, just have a ballpark number, but if Grant County would have came to you 4 years ago for this exact same design, what would that have ran us 4 years ago?
Yeah, so normally, so I've been doing this for 20 years, and the average escalation factor is about 3% a year. However, when 2020 hit and we went through all of that, we were pushing 10, 15, 20% increases. We're not seeing those same increases today. It's settled off a little bit, but you're talking 25, 30% probably. That's shooting from the hip. I mean,
Yeah.
not a crystal ball or a past or the future, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Fry, a couple questions. You have a $2.2 million design contingency, and then there is a $2.5 million design and engineering. So what would be separate between those two?
So contingencies for items that we cannot yet anticipate.
Okay.
Okay, the design and engineering are the fees to pay all the architects and engineers to put everything in the documents. So one's a fee, one's a contingency that would be used for things as we discover. Like I said, we get to 100% design, we bid it out. We don't really need a design contingency because the design's done and we're not guessing or anticipating things. Then it's the contingency for just unforeseen items that we would discover in the midst of construction.
So almost $10 million in contingency and other hard costs. So we've spent $2 million on scoping fee now. And then there's a scoping and pre-construction phase for $157,000.
So
The difference would be what?
so the $2,024,000 is what we're currently contracted on for scoping, which pays for design and engineering, a portion of design and engineering, and pre-construction services, site survey, all of that. So that $2 million costs are in these line items, and we're just taking it out because you've already contracted it and have started to pay on it.
And just to know, obviously, ARPA dollars from the previous commissioners were used as far as the design scoping.
Yep. So we're not doubling up there. We're just saying, hey, let's put all of the costs in it and then take that out because it's being paid direct. And it's not something we think you would consider bonding for again.
So if I could just have the floor for a minute. So just to go over what you've mentioned, you take the base bid, you build the pod, you get the kitchen and the laundry, and then also the HVAC, controls of the
The
detention
central
center.
plant, yep.
And those are things that we know that they're already bad because we've seen it firsthand just in the last few months. To the alternates to double bunk and to do things in the detention center, was there, let's just say hypothetically that we just go ahead and leave the detention center for juveniles only, is that still doable?
There's still work that would need to be done in that existing pod.
So yeah, I guess my question would be, if we decided, we couldn't afford option that included the juveniles, could we take the existing pod, use it for juveniles, and then what that alternate cost would be?
Couple of things will come into play, I think. One would be intake booking processing for adults and juveniles. I think we're going to be mixing those two together, and that's going to be illegal. Sorry. But yeah, so can it be done? I think, we'd have to modify the housing pod, the rec yard next to it. We could create something, it's just not going to be the best use of your money.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Could we look at what is alternate to that housing pod? Would it be reduced if you're doing that? Yeah, because we wouldn't double bunk and do some other things, but as Alex had mentioned, that number, a lot of that is the infrastructure for that, the systems.
So would any of the prices of the alternates change? So say we chose one of the alternates and did not do the housing pod, and we chose an alternate, would it remain the same price?
Yeah, right. The way we've priced them right now, the alternates are kind of à la carte. Now, if you said today, hey, we want a base bid plus 3, 4, and 7, when we go and finish design and we know that's what we're doing, we would price that as that. And could we get some efficiencies there? Potentially, yes. Once we define that detailed package to the subcontractors. I think we're pretty close, but tried to be a little conservative there.
So in your team, in your opinion, based on the base bids and the alternates and all the wishes, is there like a fine line or a gray area that you're like, this is really, in order to make it make sense for 25 years of use, this is really what you need to do? Do you have that as a suggestion from the team to say, look, you really need to do the base plus, as you put it, 2 and 3, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. In terms of, we tried to put as much of what we thought was needed for the long-term duration of the building in the base bid. The juvenile edition, alternate 1, is a separate edition. You know, it's been expressed all along. We need to try to get the juveniles back here. They really need a separate facility. There's a lot of rules, regulations on that. The plan we have, we think fixes that, but it's a whole new project on the backside of the D home. The housing pod, I think it would be of benefit to do work there, because there's a lot of beds available in that area, but there's still a lot of work there. Simple stuff like re-roofing the D home, alternate 7, probably would make sense to do it to limit future damage in an existing building. But really, it's a preference on a lot of things. What does the scope need to be? Ideally, do it all. It fits all of the needs that were required in the study, as if we did it all, but we understand that there's budget, and what can we do to maximize that?
Does anybody know if this base bid is our number, what's our finance charge? How much are we paying in finances?
We've got some, 2 individuals here that can speak about financing and funding and all of that. If you'd like, I'll turn it over to them and let them talk.
Let me ask you one more question on the chart here. On the, on design and engineering, under the soft costs, there's a 2.5 million already on there. 2.5, there's a contingency of 2.2. How are those related? They're separate?
Totally unrelated.
Totally unrelated, okay. The 2 terms are similar.
Yeah,
So let me make sure. Okay.
Yep.
They're totally unrelated. Okay. Thank you.
Can I add to that, Dustin? The
Yes, sir.
design contingency, sir, is because the design is not finished, right?
Sure.
So we have, if somebody's asking us, hey, guarantee me a price today, the design contingency is there because for what's not on the drawings and has yet to be priced. That's what that is, if that makes sense. It's actual construction.
So what's design and engineering?
Design and engineering is the actual design. It's to pay Sanjay and his
Because
team.
I guess my point is, if there's still some work to be done in design engineering, does that mean the 2.5 is going to go up?
No.
Okay, that's
capped.
included. It's
Yeah.
included in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
All right.
included and fixed.
Yep.
So this is the full alternatives, that pushes to 80.
It's somewhere around
19,
there.
roughly 19.6 alternative.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, somewhere around.
roughly 19.6.
I think we-
Quick math.
We talked early on about 85 million.
Can you go back to that drawing where you left? Quick question on the center, that's where the deputies would all be.
This right here?
Yes. Isn't that where the jailers would be?
Yeah, so that's Sanjay can speak more specifically, but that's the control for that. So there's glass all around that they can see down in.
Okay. And it's only 2 tiers?
Yep.
Okay, so my question is how do they get there?
Yeah, there's access through the 2nd floor stairs, and when these connect off the 2nd floor, and they come down the corridor through their area. So they're separated from the inmate population.
That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Mike, that costs, I'm going to guess it's roughly $45 million in interest costs over 25 years. quick guess based on what we discussed earlier.
You said 19.6.
105 be the total payments based
19.6
on.
was the alternates.
19.6 is the alternates. Add all of
So-
it, 80, 79 million. So if you did 25 years of payments at 4.2 million, you're talking 105. So.
Let me pass these out. This will, I think, answer some of your questions. Let's go that way, half the other.
I showed 105 million, it's 106, so it's close. Depends on what number you use, right?
So that, to answer that question, the 106 million is that's the total project revenues, and the 106,589 there is that's principal and interest, so total debt service. Does everybody have a packet?
I mean, that's length of financing. That's probably like 4.3%, 4.68% is this current.
Yeah, so my name is Josh Schnock. Thank you. I'm with Robert W. Baird. We've been engaged to serve as underwriter for the county. And I'm here really just talk illustratively some financing schedule that we could look at as we get closer to this project being financed and closed on. So as Dustin mentioned, we're sizing this right now to a $60 million project fund. I understand it's 59 some change, but to round up here, it's 60 million. How we are sizing this, and then we're using a desired repayment source of jail lead, so jail local income taxes. It's a pretty common revenue source to repay jail debt. Many counties across the state enact this type of lead, and they use it for this exact repayment sources to finance jail projects. The other one would be operational savings for reduction of inmate housing contracts. We understand that could be around 1.2 million in savings annually.
Actually, more than that now.
Is it more than that potentially?
We're spending more than we, at that time, we're talking at 1.2, it's more like probably closer to 2 million overall than a savings.
Well, that's with juvenile.
Yeah, it's with, you take off 600,000 for juvenile, 600,000.
About 1, 2.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. That's maybe could be
It's in the range.
Could be a
It's
conservative.
not necessarily good, it's in the range.
Yeah, not necessarily, well, okay. Next thing here is if we could get a guaranteed maximum price effective in 2025. Construction bids would be then due around February of 2026. That would allow for what we call a bond pricing. That's when our firm would go out and sell the bonds to investors and lock in your interest rate on that day in February. And then that would mean funding in March of 2026. So that would be when the bonds are closed on. The county would secure the money at that time. A couple items I do want to talk about here. So there's a difference between what a bond security is and what the repayment source is. So the security is what a rating agency would look at and say this is, their credit rating. So all municipalities in Indiana and schools are given a credit rating from Standard & Poor's. It's similar to if you had a credit card and your credit card company said, this is your credit rating and this is the rate that you're going to receive because that's what your credit rating is. Standard & Poor's is obviously it's a little more complicated because there's a lot more revenues for accounting, but it's a similar process. So we think in order for the county to get the lowest possible interest rates, we would pursue a general revenue structure of the county, and that would allow you to pay the jail local income taxes and potentially back with property taxes. When I say that the repayment and the security are different, you repay it with jail local income taxes, but you would be able to back it with property taxes to get lower interest rates. You following me there? Okay, and that would, we assumed here that the county would receive around an 8 rating from S&P. I think the county was rated in somewhere in the 2016 to 2018 range, and the county received an A+ on their at that time. So this is a slightly conservative estimate. Our hope is to maintain that A+ rating. If the bonds were to sell today, this would be around 26-year term. We're looking just under a 4.7, what we call a true interest cost. So that's the interest rate the county would actually pay, is around a 4.68%. That's if we sold today. And then at the bottom here is just a very illustrative schedule here. So we have these jail local income taxes. This is an estimate from Ben Rager at Coonrod. So we're assuming $3 million annually jail local income taxes, and then 1.2 million of the operational savings starting in pay year 2028. And those would be the project revenues to pay the principal and interest of the bonds. So we have those two revenue sources. It's totaled. And then we have the 2026 lease rental payments, which is the debt service payments on the project, and then the coverage. So we are solving to those revenues. So, if rates go down a bunch, then it's possible that if the county wanted to, we could keep the same payment term, or you could potentially shorten it as well, because you'd be able to pay more principal up front. So I'm going to stop there for a second and see if there are any questions.
So if we receive an A+ rating, would that 4.68 go down?
I'd say yes, potentially, but it's kind of where the market's at. And I do actually have a market slide here on the second page. And this slide here at the bottom in particular is the 2-year movement of the 10-year MMD. So the most common benchmark curve rate is the treasury rate. The MMD is what municipalities use. It's the tax exempt curve, because municipalities can borrow using tax exempt rates. You can see that there's been quite a bit of volatility in the last couple of years. And even in the last 6 months, there's been quite a bit of volatility. So yes, if you received an A+ rating, you'd get better rates than you would an A rating, but it's hard to tell if it'd be better in February if it will than it is today.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're mentioning 4.68%. This chart is showing smaller percentage.
Yeah, that's correct. So this is what we call the benchmark curve. So this is basically like it's the equivalent to a treasury rate. So the treasury rate is basically what the federal government can borrow at, and everybody else borrows at a higher rate than that.
Right.
So this is basically what the federal government in tax exempt terms could borrow at, and then everybody else is spread to a higher level than that, because the federal government's supposed to be the risk-free asset or risk-free borrower.
You set the Fed fund rate, basically what you're doing.
I guess my question would be, why are we looking at this one? We should be looking at what the rates are that we're going to be paying. How's that changing?
Because where this curve is at is going to dictate where you borrow at in February.
Plus the ranking, right?
Yes. So it's going to be your credit rating and then where the market is, and that's going to dictate what the final interest rate is. It just moves around quite a bit.
So if Jerome lowers the rates next week and our credit rating is at A+, we might be able to knock off 0.75%.
Potentially, the market there's a heavy supply and demand aspect out there of how much money is wanting to be invested in bonds. So there's a lot of different factors out there at play and what the expectations are for the next couple of years. So everything's supposed to be forward-looking, so it's hard to tell, but that is, a lot of people believe that potentially we could be in a better spot at the end of the year, but who knows? Any more questions?
I'm not sure if you're the one to ask this or not, but somebody on the team probably can answer this. Are we looking at a project that is subject to remonstration from the public?
That is actually a better question for Max is at Barnes and Thornburg. They're serving as bond counsel, so he's the legal steps, and you'd be the better guy for it.
A great segue, though.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Scripted question.
Got the message, I guess, huh?
Good evening, commissioners, council members. My name is Max Adams with the law firm of Barnes and Thornburg, serving as bond counsel for this project. I believe in the packet that Dustin handed out, there's a funding timeline option towards the back. I'll make sure that was the case before I went any further. Last 2 pages. So in terms of, well, let me answer the first question. Is this subject to remonstration? It will not be, because what we're doing, so the remonstration process is for property tax bonds. This has a property tax backup in order to enhance the marketability of the bonds, get the county a better interest rate. However, there's a statute that says if you're relying on a different revenue source, you have a reasonable expectation, which we take to mean 125% coverage. If you have a different revenue source that is paying for these, you have a reasonable expectation that will pay back those bonds, and you don't need to go through the remonstration process, even if you have a property tax backup. So in this case, we have a general revenue pledge. Baird has done the calculations, and that general revenue pledge is sufficient to meet that reasonable expectation test. This is the general revenue pledge. If you haven't heard of it before, it's not a new concept, but it's become more popular in the post-Senate Bill 1 era. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with, those effects of Senate Roll Act 1. So this sort of general revenue pledge is coming back into become more popular. So to answer that question, there will be a remonstration process. In terms of the bonding timeline, it's actually fairly straightforward, at least from where we sit. I know it looks like it's a lot of steps, but in terms of for what it could have been, it's a fairly straightforward process. So for the calendar, really kind of breaks it up into 2 steps. It's sort of the approval of the lease and sort of the approval of the bonds. This follows a lease rental structure. So if you think about your typical general obligation bonds, very, property tax bonds, direct debt, county issues the bonds, pays them directly with property taxes, very straightforward. Because of if you're the debt limit, the constitutional debt limit, there's also statutory debt limits. The way we get around that is the Supreme Court of Indiana has said that lease rental payments are not considered debt because you incur lease rental obligations, for every 6 months that you're occupying a particular structure. That's not considered debt. So we use that structure. It's very common in schools. Schools almost exclusively, except for very small issuances, use this lease rental structure. It's very common in the school world. For here, because it's a larger project, we're paying it from local income taxes, we have to go through this lease rental structure. So lease rental structure, think of sort of the county as still the issuer, except on paper, really, the issuer is going to be what we call a building corporation. It's going to be a nonprofit building corporation. The county is going to sell the project site to the nonprofit building corporation. The building corporation is going to be president, secretary, vice president, all of these, people appointed by the county. So it's county controlled. It's really kind of more like an on-paper type of transaction versus, something more, kind of like a legal fiction type of thing.
Do we have a current corporation like that now, or?
And that was going to be one of my questions for this moves forward, figuring out whether there is one or not. I'm not sure. Okay. It would say some steps. If you're looking at some of the initial steps here, it's establishing the building corporation. I'm not sure. Josh mentioned a 2016 transaction. I'm not sure if that was a lease rental structure or not. If it was, you likely use the building corporation. We could just,
we're just paying out a debt service fund.
Yeah. If that's the case, then it likely there wasn't a building corporation.
I'd say there's not. Yeah. That I wish there's one in the past or not. Yeah. So.
Sometimes it's just better to start a new one for like really older bonds, but that's something that we can tackle when we dig into prior transactions. So the county is going to sell the project site to this nonprofit building corporation. The nonprofit building corporation is going to issue the bonds on behalf of the county. They will pay debt service on the bonds from the lease rentals that they receive from the county. So you will sell the project site to this nonprofit building corporation. They will lease it back to you. Again, it's kind of a paper transaction. They will lease it back to the county. And the lease rentals that the building corporation receives from the county will be used to pay debt service. Now, the county will be paying, these repayment sources that we discussed, the local income taxes and the savings, an amount of maybe 1.2, maybe $2 million, whatever that number is. Those repayment sources will be used to pay the lease, and then those lease rentals would be used by the building corporation to pay debt service. So I say all that to sort of preface the planning calendar. You look at the November 17th, November 19th meetings. That's sort of setting up, approving the formation of the building corporation, a reimbursement resolution to the extent you want to reimburse the county for any expenses it's already incurred for this project. You can repay those once you, there's a 60-day look-back period, but you can repay from bond proceeds once you adopt that resolution. And then sort of accepting a lease petition, which is part of the whole lease rental structure. Building corporation, elects its officers and sort of approves the form of the lease. The county council has a role in approving the project, determining there's a need for a project, approving the form of the lease. And then that sort of gets us into the second phase where the Board of Commissioners are holding a public hearing on the lease. Assuming everything goes well, you execute the lease. There's a 30-day remonstrance period, not the property tax remonstrance, but sort of just like an objection period that's built into lease rental bonds. That's a 30-day period following the execution of lease. There's also this second county council meeting, the additional appropriations. So if you think about what I said earlier, the county is going to sell the project site to the building corporation. Well, that money that the county receives from the sale needs to be appropriated towards the project. It usually just goes back into the project fund. That way, so it'll be the project fund from the county side, remaining bond proceeds that the building corporations will have will go into the project fund. That's kind of how you reach your total project fund. After that, you publish that notice of execution of the lease, and there's that objection period. After that, once that 30 days has told, then we're just looking at pricing and closing. And this is sort of it's a little spread out because we have some time between now and February, March timeline for pricing and closing. If we wanted to wait a little bit before we started the timeline, we have that flexibility, but this kind of gives us some breathing room in terms of holding the meetings, that 30-day remonstrance period, and different public hearings. So.
I guess the role of commissioners versus role of council, I guess we need some clarification of that.
Sure. So the commissioners really, I sort of drive the ship on these bond issuances. They're going to approve the form of the lease, included with that, approving the project. The building corporation also sort of serves a role there. Typically, building corporation members are appointed by commissioners, but again, that's sort of the county, however the two bodies want to, however they want to staff that building corporation. But they sort of, acting on behalf of the county, will approve some of the financing documents as well. In terms of the county council's role, they're going to, approve the project, determine the need for the project. That's another thing. And sort of within those resolutions, also approving sort of the plan of financing. You're going to need to pledge certain revenue sources to the project. That's under council's purview. And then also the additional appropriation of those sale proceeds from the sale of the project site.
Now, when, the bonds are sold, proceeds come into our project fund.
Yep.
We appropriate them. We actually pay the bills for the project as it's occurring. We actually pay those bills from our funds, or is it money that's given to the building corporation to make those payments?
Well, I say county and building corporation funds. Everything will actually just be with a trustee bank, and they will just pay, basically just draw down those bond proceeds from those accounts.
The dollars from the bond sale will go to that trustee bank. They will make the payments of the costs that are incurred.
Exactly.
Okay. The only thing we'll be showing here, of course, you mentioned we have to do the additional appropriation. So we're appropriating the entire 60 million sale, whatever that number is. So we're making one appropriation of that 60 million, and it's given to the trustee bank.
It won't be quite as much as 60 million. So the 60 million is, size to the project fund. We'll get appraisals for the project site. So, if you just wanted to sell the project site for some other reason to a third party, you get appraisals, and that's what you sell it off for. It could be, I truthfully don't know what the, price of that would be. It could be half of the project fund. It could be 10 million, whatever that is. That's just what you would sell it for. So it'd be like, let's say it's just half and half. So you sell the project site for 30 million, building corporation still has the remaining 60 million, and that kind of makes up the whole project.
On our books, county auditors, her ledger, what fund is going to be? There's not going to be a fund on there for that then?
Likely not, no.
Okay, because all the dollars are going to be with the trustee bank.
Yes.
the commissioners review the payments the trustees made on behalf of the project? Is that what happens?
Typically, yes, and again, it's county by county, what sort of role you want to be playing for that. Sometimes it's commissioners, sometimes it's council and commissioners. I've even seen, more active building corporations sort of play a role in that. Sometimes it's also staff handled. It's just kind of, and that's all part of the financing documents, all that stuff that's approved sort of later on in the process. And also the BOT process, which we haven't been involved in BOT stuff, but that also can play a role in how those funds are paid.
Okay, so if we decide to proceed with this, you'll be working with commissioners and or council to get these steps completed, and we have to collect signatures, and somebody's got to do that. I'm not sure who does that, but somebody's got to collect signatures, so.
We typically prepare the, lease petition. Again, as active as the county wants us to be in helping do that, but usually we definitely draft everything, provide those to the county staff, and typically county staff does it again. Happy to play whatever role the county needs us to, so.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I saw that, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't sure, I guess. I wasn't anticipating this kind of a procedure, I guess.
It's a little strange, you wonder what the, collecting 50 signatures for a project, you wonder what the taxpayer buy-in on that is, but again, it's just really just what is outlined in the statute, hitting those steps and making sure we follow all those, so. Any other questions?
What's the criteria for those 50 signatures?
It's just landowners or really just taxpayers in the county. We typically recommend non-elected officials, kind of shortens the list of, taxpayers, but typically non-elected officials, property owners or taxpayers in the county, so. Anything else? Hand it back to Dustin. Thank you.
Well, talk about anything else or answer any other questions that ultimately tried to have everybody here that can address anything. Again, just to emphasize, we were tasked with trying to bring a scope for the $60 million budget. We wanted to put as much work into that as we could. We're still at 60% design, and we'll continue to refine that as we proceed through scoping.
Is that schedule, are you behind what you thought you might be? You say 60%, are you where you thought you'd be?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. I guess I was thinking we'd be closer to that final price, I guess, than we are now.
Yeah, no, this is kind of where we thought when we planned out the
Okay.
design timeline. It's
Okay.
quite the process to design that, especially when we're dealing with an existing building on top of it. But if you don't have any other questions, we appreciate the time, and we're here to answer anything and come around and.
So, obviously, the council meets tomorrow night to discuss the correctional rehab lit. This project, still, even if they was to accept and pass the correctional rehab lit tomorrow evening, the project still could come in, and the council has the ultimate control of not approving the sale of the bonds. They still have the control of the project. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we will still have to do under the BOT, we'll have to present a final scope for approval and ultimate execution of the BOT agreement. Our timeline has that closer to end of year, January, which then coincides with the timeline that Max just shared of bonds being sold in February.
Make sure I'm clear that, so you're saying the final design number, look a little bit more like year end, early January to have that number?
Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear that, ultimately they, still have the decision even after making a decision.
Yeah, I guess we have a right to still turn it down, not do that, I guess, but what kind of makes it a little interesting is tomorrow night, we're gonna make a decision, yes or no, to whether we're gonna put a .2 jail lid on. And if we decide not to do the project at some point, or have the jail lit piece on, that's how do we either eliminate that or deal with that, I guess becomes a question.
Obviously, if you do implement the jail lit and you don't act on said project, I mean, there's gonna be other projects that would be, you know, potential. I mean, if you do decide to do nothing, you'll have to do something to the current facility. I mean, if you wanna go down
Yeah, I know
that
what you're
road.
saying. Yeah, I know what you're
Right.
saying. Yeah.
So obviously, you're gonna, those dollars are gonna be held for future down payments, could potentially.
I see what you're saying, yeah. Just interesting scenario, you know, we're not quite to that decision-making as far as the project goes, but we gotta decide on the lit piece at this point, so, yeah. It's interesting.
So what are you saying then, if the pot is turned down, but there's some alternatives that we like, can the jail lit be used for the alternatives? It still could be.
That would make sense.
Because it's a jail project.
I guess, just personally, I'm not sure how the rest of the council feels. Tomorrow night, we're gonna, you know, have this on the agenda for a public hearing and us to consider what we're gonna do with this at this point. Are the commissioners gonna be present tomorrow, kind of giving us your recommendations, your thoughts on what you see happening based on this presentation?
I mean, I have a previous engagement in Pendleton tomorrow. I will not be here.
Yeah, I plan on attending. As far as will we as commissioners have a agreeable project? I mean, obviously, we're still, you know, working with BW to make sure that we check all of our boxes. And I think that, you know, it's not, why you want to say, hey, you know, it's the commissioners driving the wheel. I mean, obviously, the more people you have on your team, like the council, I think that we all have common, you know, knowledge of what's going on. And I think it's a group effort.
Yeah, no doubt that it is, but I also, as one council member, I want to hear you guys are in charge of the facility, so to speak, so I want to hear what your thoughts about this presentation are, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, the base bid is the minimum. And if the interest rates come in at a lower, you know, if they could come in lower, that'd be great. Maybe you could choose another option or, you know, an alternative.
Yeah, I think we're probably, based on what we're hearing tonight, we're probably safe in assuming that whatever we would decide at some point becomes the project, it's going to be no more than what's shown to us here tonight. It's going to be that or less, hopefully, based on contingencies coming down and those kind of things. So, you know, there's that to keep in mind. But obviously by tomorrow night, we're not going to know what that project's going to be finally. But, or not what it's going to be tomorrow night until sometime later for sure. But we ought to have something in mind, I think, as we consider whether we're going to put the lit tax in. Right now, we have something in our minds personally is I'm able to live with that number, or I'm not able to live with that number, or, you know, what am I thinking when it comes to that? So.
Yeah, I think that goes back to, I mean, obviously, you know, we're hearing this at the same time you are, as far as, you know, what's being presented. I think also just keep in mind, like I mentioned earlier, that you still have the control, even if you pass the correctional rehab tax, you still have the control. And so are you saying that if, you know, if you don't do anything with a project, there's still gonna have to be renovation done on the old, if that comes to that? I mean, there's gonna have to be a project either way.
It depends on how far removed that either new project is or what kind of renovation you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah. I mean, just because if we would say no tomorrow, you know, no to the tax, that's one thing. But if we, at the end of December, or early January, say, we're not gonna do this project now, doesn't mean we aren't gonna do one at some point.
Yeah, and
It's gonna happen at some point, just a matter of when.
saving for the down payment.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean,
That's a level.
based on what you were saying, though, that price is gonna go up theoretically 5% per year.
And that's what, yeah,
We've already lost 5 years.
yeah, the longer we wait, the more expensive it's gonna be.
And there's no doubt that's gonna happen in my mind. It'll go up as time goes on, the cost you pay will go up, yeah. Just a matter of how comfortable you guys are as we are with what we're looking at this point.
Yeah, I guess the struggles that I have are renovating the existing D home causes employee relocations. So that's a problem. And then when you start basically renovating that, because you've renovated that, and now you have to upgrade everything to the current codes. And so that's going to change all of that. That increases your cost for this project. And because you do that, so I struggle with that. I also feel like these project alternatives are really just a means to try and keep the cost down. And do we really know what could or should be done? And are we just trying to fixate on this $60 million number, or should it really be this $80 million number to do things right? Normally I like to see, okay, here's what the project will look like, but you're not there. So I don't really know, what will this look like? I mean, so far it's just a square on paper. Before we had seen some pictures of this could be what it is or things like that, but I just, I struggle with things like that. And that's just me. So, but, I come from an accounting background and a banker background. I was that for 10 years, but anyway, that's just me.
So obviously moving into tomorrow night, now's your opportunity, and maybe even tomorrow night, what do you need to feel good about the project? Or what information do you want BW to go back in to analyze to?
Well, one of the things that, as we talked as a jail committee with the professional crew, as we were going through the early stages, I was pretty concerned. I guess one of my key components I wanted to see done was that we had nobody going out of county. That was my thought, including juveniles and adults. Probably with the project we're looking at and the costs associated with it, that juvenile piece is not going to happen, I'm guessing, based on it. Just my opinion, just my thought here based on that number, which means we'll have out of county juveniles if we don't do that. Currently, of course, we're talking 7.5 million on the alternate cost. Currently, I think we have budgeted for next year $600,000 for juvenile out of county. I think that's the budget. And hopefully we'll need all that. That's our budget, I think. And that would be 12 and a half years of 600,000 to get to that 7.5 million. So it's a lot of years to get to that point. So can I live without that not being there? Probably.
I didn't include staff either.
Yeah, and it sure doesn't include staff. That's just the cost of the facility. So that doesn't include operations, just constructing it. So, in my own mind, I'm thinking, can I let that piece go to get this accomplished? Yeah, probably I can. Don't like it, but it probably makes sense from a cost standpoint to consider that. There'd be some other things like here on the roofing. It makes sense if we're going to do a project that we do the roof on that thing, even the old building, to make sure that roofing is intact. I mean, it's $300,000 almost total, but it seems that you make sense to make sure that the roof that you put on this place is going to be good for the long term. Unless the commissioners have a cheaper way of getting that done, I guess.
I believe that we've already addressed the skylight issue, and I know they was working on the roof as well.
Okay, so there could be some things we'll consider differently, I guess, but, one of the things we've talked about is if we don't do it now, when are you going to do it? And how much is it going to cost you in the future to do it? We've talked about that as a concern. So somehow we have to, I guess, in our own minds decide, would that future cost be growing enough that it makes sense to do something now or not? Those are things we got to think about individually as we decide this.
To that point, we looked at this as trying to say, hey, there was a study done a while back. These were the needs, these were the benefits, these were the goals of the project. And yeah, we have focused to a $60 million project because that's what we've been told to do. Ultimately, to achieve everything that you wanted in the study and fully renovate that D-home and add on, getting your juvenile, we were talking at that 75 to 80 million. We said that early on. I think we were closer to 85. It's refined in. So if there's additional appropriations, if you're, hey, the 600,000 for juveniles, if that was calculated into a potential funding mechanism, our team can run those numbers and say, here's what you could get. We didn't focus on what more you could do because we were 60. It's the number that we were trying to hit. So.
Yeah, from a payment standpoint, that seemed to be our level of, well, I shouldn't say that. That's not true. It's not across the board. Some of us had willing to go to that level, but maybe some not. Kind of thing. One of the alternates in there talks about the housing pod, 6.6 million. Without that housing pod, we still have beds at 350 in just the pod. And our thinking, we feel like that should be enough to satisfy our needs, I think. Am I wrong in that comment? I mean, we've talked about that. How many beds you're going to make available to the system?
And mixed.
And 350 is one of our decent numbers, I was thinking.
I think we all agree that they're going to fill them up, right?
Immediately. So I guess my point is, we could live without that alternate too if we didn't want to renovate that section for another 92 beds, I guess. is what it comes
Well, I mean, the other thought, Jim, is just to piggyback on what you just said. So if you would go for alternate A, or alternate one, and you do the housing pod, you solve both of what you were just talking about. So for $14 million, you bring the juveniles back home, you add 92 beds. When you add it to the current jail, you're at a minimum 372 beds between the two. Because you're gonna have 280 in the current jail. You have 92.
Oh, you're saying not do the new pod,
Not do
just
the new
Oh, I see what you're
pod.
saying.
You have a $14 million expenditure as opposed to a $60 million expenditure. And you gain more beds.
But you have an old facility you're dealing with then too. And when you're gonna replace that old facility becomes that, is it gonna be 5 years down the road? Is it gonna be 15 years down the road? Yes, that becomes part of your
And there
conversation.
would be elements in the, if you did that, I know I said they're kind of à la carte, they're à la carte to add to the base bid. If you said, hey, we just want to do alternates, there's stuff that's in the base bid that would need to go in to create a new base bid. Like the central plant is in the base bid. You can't go fix the pod without having the new boiler chiller system. So it's all on the basis of you did the base bid. So that would be a whole nother scenario that we'd have to run. Frankly, I don't think we could run that in 24 hours.
Understand.
Sir, can I ask you a question just real quick? And I think Mr. McWhorter addressed it with you, and I quite honestly didn't understand it. So you're coming in at a 4.68 interest rate, but based over the last 3 years, it hasn't even been close to that.
That might be a Josh.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
Got a little nervous
Yeah.
there for a second.
I'm getting my dark haired guys in suits.
All right, so can you repeat your question really quick?
Yeah, so you've got us at a 4.68 estimate on the interest
Right.
rate. And over the last 3 years, based on this, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like it's touched that.
That's right. So first of all, the interest rate, we have a yield curve, right? So when you borrow for 2 years, you pay a lower interest rate. When you borrow for 30 years, it's a higher interest rate, right? And you see that with your mortgage. So this is, first of all, this is the 10-year, which is kind of the most common. So that would be a lower borrowing amount or lower borrowing term than the 26 that I discussed. So you will see a lower benchmark rate here.
Gotcha.
But as really how this works is the county will borrow with a spread off the benchmark. So, and that has to do with the federal funds rate, it has to do with how the market, where the market's at any point in time due to supply and demand. But as of right now, the 10-year benchmark is around a 285. And that's the 10-year, so the 26 would be much higher than that. But if you spread, and if you borrow for 10 years, you spread maybe 50, 60 basis points off that, then you'd be somewhere in the 330 range for the borrowing, for the true interest cost.
Is it pie in the sky thinking that we could get a 3.9 or a 4% interest rate? Is that like impossible?
I don't think it's impossible. I mean, could I stand here and tell you that that's going to happen? Like, I would love for that to happen. It'd be great for municipalities in Indiana, but as of right now, I mean, that's a fair amount of movement, but it's not possible.
We were talking 4.3 back earlier in the year as a guess for the rate.
Yeah.
4.3. Yeah, this chart doesn't reflect what the rate we're paying on.
Right, yeah. I just did a simple loan calculation that I used for the bank, and if it came in at 4%, or I think maybe 3.9, that gives us another $6 million. It keeps the term the same, keeps the payment the same, and gives us another $6 million to play with. And that, again, that was just off of a loan calculation that I used, so.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Loan calculation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I just helped
Yeah, no worries.
me figure things in my head, so, thank you.
Is there anybody out there that could give us an independent opinion on what the longevity of that, and even including like proper maintenance over the next few years? Is there, I don't know anybody, is there anybody out there that we could turn to?
You're saying if we build a new pod?
No, what we could get out of our current jail? What our longevity could be?
Well, like if we maintain, if we put some money
Put some money
it,
into it, had a proper maintenance plan to continue that, is there?
When I toured the jail and that jailer showed me what it took him to close the jail door, that's when was clear to me that we needed something new, but that's a good question, Mike.
I think we've had some conversations with Chuck and with Mr. Foley a few times. I think the opinion varied from their position, I think, as far as having someone from the outside coming in and look. I don't know if that's possible or not.
We did those renovations, I mean, you thought it was gonna last, so.
Yeah, that was one of the conditions when we sold those bonds back in, 17 or whatever it was, that it was gonna last at least the 15, 20-year range.
That'd be,
We still have bond payments left on
Oh, yeah.
that, on that project.
that'd be the advantage
Till 36, I think it is.
of a new pod. Certainly, that'd be an advantage, hopefully.
That's, I guess, another question. Have you guys given more thought about what will happen to let's say you build the new, what happens to the existing structure?
I know there's been talk amongst us as commissioners. The original plan has been to see about, leasing or some type of mental health rehabilitation facility. And obviously, our county's a huge opioid in a crisis, I would say. And so we really have no long-term treatment facilities, and it's going to be, used for something like that. I mean, obviously, I just heard a few days ago, could the old jail house the juveniles? I just struggle with doing much with the old jail as far as, detention goes. I know that all the security systems, so to speak, the doors, all that stuff's aged.
Are there some of it though in better shape? I mean, in other words, we did that work in, let's say 19, when the work was actually done, 18 or 19, and we did some security type work with that, I believe.
Yeah,
So is part of that structure able to accommodate 10 juveniles with reasonable costs?
I would say that, yeah, there's definitely less abuse floors than others, for sure. And so, yeah, could it accommodate? Obviously, if it's sitting empty.
Well, I know, the question comes, if
How
it's
much?
going to be sitting there, should we demolish that building, just get rid of it so it's not sitting there anymore? What's the cost doing that? And
Yeah,
or are we going to use it for something else that's productive?
Obviously, there's nothing that the commissioners have that's set in stone. At this point, they're just, pipeline ideas. Obviously, I think, ultimately, if there is something to do with mental health or rehabilitation, I think that could ease the capacity in the jail as well. But again, it's just a high-level approach at this time.
We'll take advantage of having architects and engineers in the crowd. Is it possible to convert a jail space into a treatment facility? Has that ever been done? It can.
Short answer is yes.
Yeah.
Anybody can. Anything
Yeah,
can.
is it easy, especially with the jail facility? There's a lot of restrictions with structural and, existing infrastructure that you got to work around, but it's possible to do probably part of it. The housing cell upstairs gets a little tricky when you're trying to put, mental patients up there, so it's possible.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot, Bob.
No, you're not.
Take advantage of the expertise we have in the crowd.
I want to say thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate that, for sure. I don't know if anybody else has any comments with the council or the commissioners. Otherwise, I was going to open it up to see if there were any public comments. Yep, you have one? Please come up to the microphone and state your name and your address, and then let us know what you're thinking.
All right, my name is Ed Bounds. I live at 1526 South Florence Street here in Marion. I like your plan, I really do. But there's something that I need every one of you to understand. How did we get here? How did we get in this mess? Now, we've been doing some investigative reporting. And unfortunately, police are sitting outside bars, waiting on people to leave and lighting them up. If you look at the current booking, it is alcohol, alcohol, alcohol. Now, is this worth to you all, the taxpayers, over petty? I'm not saying we overlook crime. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is, you get these guys to build this project, and I promise you in 5 years, they'll be back. Because people are looking at, we can fill it up. And no one is saying, how can we dump the cup? It is so easy to fill up than it is to hear a conversation to stop putting people in. Now, Mr. Patel, thank you for telling them the alternative, because in Grant County, we have a serious mental health problem out here. If you don't believe me, please feel free to, I'll take you and let you see it. I see it every day. We have people with serious drug problems, in some cases, both. Now, those people need help. A lot of people, mental health, they need someone to help coach take their medication. And if we, Marion Police, keep arresting the same old people, they'll arrest this young lady on Thursday, and they'll be bringing her back through the same doors on Saturday. So if we can prevent that revolving door and put them in long-term care, that will give the police a chance to focus on who's really shouldn't be in our community. And that's people who sell fentanyl, meth, drugs, and these youngsters running around here with semi-automatic guns. I think we need more than 9 beds, because the average gangster is starting out at 12 years old. 12 years old. So please look at what, you guys have the power to call the courts and the prosecutor in and say, okay, listen, enough's enough. Quit worrying about these small little petty cases, and let's focus on bringing the numbers down. Because, like I said, I like this plan, because something's got to get done. And what this councilman here was saying earlier, Mr. McWhort, I'm sorry. I think you said 2.5 years, 2028, by the time this project.
Yeah, I was thinking 1.5 to 2, but it's more than that, looks like.
Yeah. Do we really have that kind of time? I mean, I know we need you. We got to come up with something now. So while y'all work on this, because everyone sitting here represents their people to the fullest, and they're always trying to find a way to save the taxpayers' money. So if you guys can come up with a solution to work with them across the street and the sheriff and say, we need to scale back a little bit. We need to scale back until we can figure out how we can work with these guys. And I just hope that you will consider that as an alternative.
Thank you, Mr. Bounds.
Thank you for giving the time.
And if I could continue on that, I appreciate the comments that you bring up, and you have good insight of what's going on around here that could be shared with all of us. And I think it's been mentioned before, we know that we have a spike that started 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we have statistics that doesn't show why we should have a spike of 25 to 30% increase in our jail population. We've addressed things such as continuances, that is occurring, long-term and several continuances, and some other issues. I don't think we know what our root problem is at this point. What I'm afraid of is $105 million is not going to solve our problem when we don't know what the root problem is. And until we address the root problem, we're throwing money out the window.
I agree with you, Councilman Scott, because one thing, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. law enforcement is mad at every one of you. And they're mad at it because you wouldn't give them that open checkbook that they want. I understand your decision because you just can't pay everybody what you would like to pay them. But they don't understand that. And so the mayor, Ronald Morrell Jr., just told mayor and police, hey, I don't have that kind of money to pay you guys. So what they do, everybody came together and said, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna tick off the citizens of Marion and Grant County.
I sure hope that's not the case, Mr. Browns, but I would let you know that tomorrow night, we're actually gonna vote because we have settled our contract with our local deputies. And so hopefully that'll be a positive note. But I think we're a little off base because, I mean, the whole thing that we're looking at is whether or not our jail can last or how much longer it will last. And then how big of a facility to build, which I understand part of that would be how many people are we housing, who's getting arrested and things like that are unfortunately out of our control. And we have to trust that our prosecutors and our deputies and everybody are really doing the right thing that they should do. As far as the mental health issue goes, I mean, part of that would have to do with the state closing mental health facilities years ago. We do have a facility here trying to help treat people with mental issues. But unfortunately, it does appear that it may not be enough. But I know the sheriff has talked about too, trying to get group breakouts and things like that, and having more room in a jail so that he can do that to try and work on some of these people that do continue to break the law, to try and help break that cycle.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've got to do. And part of that too would be with those juveniles. It's like, where their parents draw, basically lawbreakers, so that now they are lawbreakers, and we've got to break that cycle. We've got to help, these people to see the light of day, but I don't think it's anything that we're going to solve tonight, unfortunately.
Well, no, I know it's not, Mr. President. I was just, giving you from what I deal with out here. I've talked to the chiefs and stuff over there. I've talked to the sheriff, and I just would like to see a solution too, because I'm a citizen out here with that. Yeah. And so if you guys can't come up with something quick, things are gonna get pretty dangerous around here.
I hope not.
I hope not either.
Yeah.
Right,
I appreciate your comments. Anybody else from the public have anything? If not, the county council will actually have a meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I don't know, Mr. Middlesworth, if you were going to close your meeting first, or we'll close ours, whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and close ours. The next regular meeting for the commissioners is October the 20th, and we'll be in recess until then.
All right, and then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. See you all tomorrow night.